Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. It is Thursday, August the 4th, 2022. Two hip-hop artists have again been denied bail in a serious criminal case where they could face dozens of years behind bars if convicted. But many are saying that the only evidence against Young Thug and Gunna are their high-profile rap lyrics. Now, a new bill in Congress is seeking to outlaw prosecutors and others' use of lyrics in criminal and civil cases. We are expecting to be joined this morning by the hip-hop legend Russell Simmons shortly. But first, let's bring on Dawn Montgomery, NMPA journalist extraordinaire. Hey, Dawn, how are you?
Oh, I'm an extraordinaire today. I'm great.
You are an extraordinaire. Wearing all that green, doing homework, all that stuff.
Money green.
Money green. There you go. So, Dawn, Russell Simmons, the godfather of hip hop, he's expected to join us in a little bit. But we're going to talk about the Rap Act when Russell does join us shortly. But first, let's talk about this, Dawn. I don't know. You got a problem with this. Some people got a problem with this. A lot of people seem to have a problem with this, and understandably so. Monica Lewinsky, she's come out of the woodworks, Dawn. She wants Beyonce's lyrics about her to be taken out of a song that Beyonce put out almost 9 years ago. She requests that request comes after Beyonce announced that she'd be removing an offensive song lyric from her new tune "Heated," following criticism from disability advocates. What's the deal with this? This is like so long ago, and is she doing this now because the new album is like breaking all these records and getting attention?
Yes. She's definitely doing that, and we have every right to voice how we feel about something and express some concern. I mean, look at Khalees. Khalees did that. And Paris went. I mean, not Paris. I just saw Paris Brown join on. Hi.
Hey, Paris.
But Beyonce went back and took her sample out of her song. So it's like, take her going back and having the power to remove things like that, the same way Lizzo removed the word spaz in her song when she heard from a lot of disabled listeners and fans and things of that nature who expressed people use that word to be very offensive towards others just in general. And you just never know who is going to hear that and be triggered by something like that, because that's their everyday life, because that's a way of expressing how their body is responding to something at the time. And so for Beyonce to hear her fans and say, okay, I'm going to do the same thing as Lizzo. I'm going to make this immediate change and I'll take care of that. And then for Monica Lewinsky, this woman, I want to say white woman, and all of a sudden,
that would be accurate.
And she wants to jump on board to say that she feels like she should remove that when there are rappers who have referenced her. There are even other music artists who have referenced her in some form of fashion. And ma'am, unless you're willing to go against all of those other people, you can leave Beyonce out of this one.
Yeah, the song in question is Partition. Where Beyonce sings, "He popped all my buttons and he ripped my blouse. He Monica Lewinsky all on my gown." Lewinsky tweeted that it's time for Beyonce to address that after she addressed the spaz issue. Beyonce also removed the part of one of her songs that we talked about on the show the other day that had Khalees's Milkshake. And she did remove that to remove that controversy as well.
From the song Energy. Yeah, she did remove that. And I think that just kind of just goes to the power of, I know Khalees was speaking out, and, majority of her her gripe was not necessarily towards Beyonce. It was more so towards Pharrell and Chad Hugo of the Neptunes, where she lost the rights and the masters to her music, and she was promised a third of it. And so for them to continue using things without even reaching out to give her a heads up, she has every right. I feel like she has every right to ask for something like that, because I feel like it's a common courtesy. But there's also, I follow a lady named Naima who has worked in the music industry. She's known for her music sermon threads that she does on Twitter. And she expressed how no one gives a common courtesy call to tell people that they've used the sample if they don't own, the masters or what have you. Those conversations are had between attorneys. And so I don't know what was going on with Khalees that particular day. I know that I was willing to support her and really hear her out, because this is also a woman who has been grieving. She just recently lost her husband. She's getting back out there as an artist after, being somewhat off the grid, farming and doing all of the things that she's been doing with her family, and living just a totally different life, and now having to be back in the industry and having to feel a certain way of not being heard again. So I understand what her concerns were, but I think there should have been another way that should have tried to handle that.
Yeah, here's the thing that always confused me a little bit, and maybe I'm wrong, and it's good to be talking to a woman who is well versed in so many things like yourself. But um, Monica Lewinsky, there was never and we know Bill Clinton was the president at the time,
Mm-hmm.
so he abused his power for
Uh-huh.
sure in
Mm-hmm.
having this affair with her.
Mm-hmm.
But there was never from her side or any side an indication that this was she felt pressured in any way. She felt
Mm-hmm.
forced in any way. This was so Monica knew that the president, Clinton, was married.
Mm-hmm.
So she took to him, and part of that probably was the fact that he was the most powerful man in the world at the time. And, people do tend to, man, women both tend to fall for power.
Mm-hmm.
But why has she been made such a victim?
Um, at this point, it's one of those things where I think we have to think a little bit beyond, the dynamics of that particular relationship. Like, look at the age difference.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really look at the fact of, um, a lot of times you hear the saying, "You can't help who you fall in love with," right? Or, there are a lot of men who will manipulate a situation to make it seem as if the woman came after them or pursued them and did all of the things, when necessarily it was the other way around. So that there's that dynamic. But I do really, really believe if she felt victimized, I know as a young woman, I felt as if she took ownership of that. And when I say she took ownership of that, she spoke up about it. She testified. She did what she had to do. She turned in a dress that had semen still on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's one of those things where she did what she needed to do to really stand up and say that there was a relationship involved. This is
Mm-hmm.
what happened. And at the end of the day, she was not willing to allow people to belittle her. So
Mm-hmm.
I do understand where she's coming from, where if she wanted to make this concern, or for Beyonce to address for her and say, "Hey, take that down." But ma'am, you could have done that 9 years ago. You could have, like, you didn't just come under a rock and just say, "Okay, now I feel some type of way about this." And most women in those situations, I just feel as if a lot of times they kind of overlook the fact that there's a wife involved, and therefore there's a woman who she's having to deal with a lot of the things that, should I stay? Should I go? What did I know about this situation? Do I know anything? If I did know something about this, what's my role in that? So, it's very dicey in how you deal with those type of situations. But I just really, really feel this is a major stretch and reach for her to tell Beyonce to take something like that away, when necessarily I just feel as if a lot of times in our music, we take certain things that happen in around America or in our culture, and we will use it in a way where it kind of enhances the experience of the song, or it adds something to it. And ma'am, you didn't feel that way 9 years ago. Like like almost, it was almost like a badge of honor, honestly, for
Yeah,
Beyonce to even mention you in that form of fashion, in that type of song. And so but for some, then there's some people that'll argue, if she feels a way now, her feelings are very valid. But a lot of times I will say, and I say this to my children a lot of times, your feelings aren't facts. You just got to sit and how you feel. Why do you feel the way that you do? Is she doing this just because she sees a lot of these artists listening to fans and making the necessary changes immediately? And if that's the case, then ma'am, you're just jumping on a bandwagon where you cannot compare yourself to someone who's disabled, who feels triggered by hearing those words and hearing a phenomenal artist like Lizzo as well as Beyonce using that in that form to where they want to be heard and say, don't do that.
yeah. Well, Dawn has broken it all down for us. I really appreciate that. Again, we have been expecting Russell Simmons. I want to talk about the Rap Act, where it's amazing what's going on there, because apparently in this case of Gunna and Young Thug, and listen, I looked, and I know a lot of it is still under wraps. They haven't revealed all of the evidence in this case, but many are saying that the most potent evidence that they have are their own lyrics. And so this Rap Act is a new bill that's been introduced in the House of Representatives by Congressman Hank Johnson and Jamal Bowman, Hank Johnson of Georgia and Bowman of New York. It's titled the Restoration Artistic Protection Act, RAP Act. It seeks to protect artists from the use of their lyrics against them as evidence in criminal and civil proceedings. It sounds like it's an important bill. I wonder if it has any legs to get through, not just the House, but of course that very imposing Senate, Dawn.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be the key. I really feel like one thing for our communities, black and brown communities, we're being policed on everything. And at this point, where they're calling into question, lyrics and things of that nature. If it's one thing if that's a lifestyle that particular artist is expressing that they've done before and things of that nature. But it's another thing if that particular artist is actively participating in said acts that they're rapping about and things of that nature. And we all know, especially in the Black community, that a lot of these artists are not doing the things that they rap about. It's a persona, it's an image, it's a thing that has been sold to music listeners and things of that nature for decades. And as far as I'm concerned, at one point it was, let's attack NWA because of, F the police, like that type of thing. Where there's a freedom of speech where it's like, still, even that song applies to today. It's 2022. And so, the outcry from our communities where we want to have that form of expression, stop trying to tell us what we can say and what we can do, unless there's this thing where, you have the DA who has been prosecuting and reaching out about these RICO charges for various artists and things of that nature, stating that, oh, we actually have proof of said acts happening and things of that nature beyond the lyrics per se. So honestly, I feel like it's probably going to really depend upon what's going on with this particular case and everything that's happening with it, because we know previously, I was trying to pull up this information, but I'll go back and find a little research on this. But previously, there's been artists more recently over the past couple of years who have been prosecuted, and they have been proven to be doing the things that they have said they've done, right? And so I just feel as if in this situation, it just was very shocking, not only of who it was that they were charging, but more so how they did it and how many people that they went about charging in that nature. I will say there's a Black journalist by the name of Jewel Wicker who has been covering this case, particularly around the city of Atlanta for Billboard. And I think her coverage has really, really broken down what's happening in the courtroom and why the judge is denying bond, bail, and all of that. And I know one of the biggest things that Jewel mentioned was that, uh, basically like tampering with the witnesses, obstruction of justice, like things of those nature. And so that the judge has every right to do that. I mean, we know
Yeah,
this.
but Dawn, tampering with the witnesses, that comes after being arrested and locked up or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But the big question is, what evidence did they have to put them to hold them without bail in the first place?
Mhm.
To charge them, I should say, in the first place. David Youngblood writes in that lyrics should not, in general, be used to prosecute people unless those lyrics correspond as evidence to a particular case. And announcing this proposed legislation, the congressmen they note a 2021 case in which it was said Freddie Mercury did not confess to having just killed a man, because that was in his lyrics, just
Uh-huh.
killed a man, by putting a gun against his head, which was also in the lyrics, and pulling the trigger. Bob Marley did not confess to having shot a sheriff, and Johnny
Right.
Cash did not confess to shooting a man in Reno just to watch him die. And these are all lyrics from Johnny Cash, Freddie Mercury, and you can. There's so many others. Bob Marley. I mean, who know? Everybody knows that song, right? I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot the
Right, right,
deputy. You
right.
know, he never shot a sheriff.
Right. And I just, again, policing our bodies, policing what we say, policing our form of expression, policing who we are. Like, it just goes back to those where it's like they're gonna find a way. And then two, you also have to think about the political climate here in the state of Georgia, especially the city of Atlanta. A lot of people feel as if this is just one of those things where it's that quote unquote attack on crime, or the ability to be a little bit hard nosed on, making sure that the city is safe. Um, because we are having this huge governor's race and things like that that's coming up. But in my opinion, I'm like, that would mean that they would have to immediately try to, you know what I'm saying, like have the trial, try to persecute, and all of these things. And I'm just like, it doesn't really make sense, right? Like I get it, but I really don't.
But Dawn, this was
And
always
go ahead.
Dawn, this was always gonna be a hip hop
Yes,
thing, right?
yes,
This was.
yes.
I mean, we can go back and look at pop lyrics, rock and roll lyrics for sure,
Uh-huh.
metal, all of that. This was always going to be about, and it always has been about hip hop, right?
Period. And then think about it. The very listeners of that know our culture and that really pay attention and listen to hip hop are these people's kids most of the time, that are wanting to create legislation towards just shooting down anything that the hip hop community does in general, like from the clothes that we wear to how music is being shared, and then our lyrics and what we do and what we say. So it's very frustrating because at one point we think we get to a place where we can enjoy the things that we can use as our form of expression, because we're going through so much in this world. We should just be able to rap and talk about those very sad things. And then most of these rappers are storytellers who are telling a story of somebody's everyday to day life. And a lot of times we know that may not be that actual rapper's lifestyle.
Yeah, well, the congressman, in this case, Johnson and Bowman, they detail that since 2020, prosecutors in over 500 criminal cases have used artists' lyrics as evidence against the defense. And they pretty much have taken it even a step further, said this is racism. Um, any any dispute that this is all about, because when you think about hip hop, yeah, sure, there's Eminem, and sure there was Vanilla Ice. I can't think of any other prominent white hip hop artists. I'm sure they're
Mhm.
out there, but that's a genre that's dominated by African Americans, right?
Yes, it is. And even if you bring up what's that young man's name? Jesus Christ. There's a new white rapper, poor thing. I don't even really think.
Except
This is
14.
Jack Harlow. There we go. Got him.
Mhm.
Even if you think about someone like him, and a lot of his lyrics that I've heard, I haven't heard anything in particularly, but if he continues to be in this industry and be as successful as he is, I'm not sure if he's going to adapt that ability to kind of storytell and rap about, maybe a white guy who happens to be a gangster in the community or something of that nature. You get what I'm saying? Like try to apply this to someone who's white in this industry, and it's not gonna happen. Like
Well, and I mentioned Vanilla Ice. If you remember, the big controversy with him during his heyday was he rapped about coming from a certain place. Turns out, he came from upper middle class, pretty well-to-do neighborhood and family. So it's these guys, they're telling stories, right?
and that's what it is. If you're gonna start doing that, there are country music singers who they slashing tires and doing all kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So are
Yeah.
you going to go and prosecute them because they're messing with someone else's property, and or, talking about various other things that, we all know, okay, that might be, a sense of like expressing how they felt in the moment or how they felt about what was happening to them, and maybe another real life situation, but they didn't go slash nobody's tires. I don't think they did that.
Well, and there's a lot of rock and roll
Yes.
songs that talked about just as much as we talk about, people have talked about how or have alleged how hip hop has degraded women and talked about this, putting women down, calling them different. Well, rock and roll has done the same thing, right?
And then you also have, so for instance, anytime that this conversation comes up, I think about this one particular song consistently, and it bothers me because this song has the most catchiest beat. It is something that any and everybody in America, maybe internationally, knows, but it's a song by Foster the People, and it's called Pumped Up Kicks. This song literally is talking about a school shooting. And this song is still on, iTunes, Spotify, it's everywhere. Like you can find this song any and everywhere and listen to it. And my thing is, if you're gonna come after the hip hop community, you have songs like that okay, can we say that particular song is something that someone is going to be influenced to go in school and shoot up their school? Like,
Yes.
you have to think about that. So now you need to prosecute them because now they're influencing and or encouraging someone to think about doing something like that. Like, that's one of the main songs that I literally will think about anytime I hear about someone questioning the lyrics in hip hop, especially today, because it's so relevant to today. Like, even if they were taking the opportunity to kind of express an experience in America, I just don't think that is an experience that we would want to hear about like that. And then the undertones just in general of the song, you wouldn't even really catch it if you weren't paying attention to the lyrics and actually listening to what they were saying on the song.
Yeah, several of the lyrics from the Young Thug's 2019 song, "Just How It Is." The lyrics that the prosecutors have cited: "I done did the robbing. It's all my business. We know to kill the biggest cats of all kittens." So these are some of the lyrics that they are using. Dawn, let's segue now, as next week, just so you'll know, as for some reason we didn't connect with Russell this morning, but next week we do have both congressmen, Johnson and Bowman, scheduled to appear on Let It Be Known. So stay tuned, as we're going to continue this conversation for sure. The White House announced the awarding of the first grant from the nearly $300 million in funding allocated to expand access to mental health services in schools. Dawn, real quick, we got a couple of minutes. How important is mental health in schools?
It is hugely important, and as someone who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder my sophomore year in high school, I wish I had access to some type of mental health services in school between elementary and middle school. Your guidance counselor can only do so much. Understanding that, in the Black and brown communities, mental health care is still stigmatized, and people are still trying to pray things away when necessarily it's okay to pray, but it's also very, very important that we use the resources that God has given people to do, and talent to do in our community. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a huge step towards making sure that our young people understand that they're going to be heard, that they can be seen. I know with a lot of the issues that we've had over the past decade, especially in regards to school shootings, a lot of these young people that carried out those school shootings mostly did not look like Black and brown students. And I will say that their biggest issues and the biggest defense that they always had was mental health crisis and or bullying and things that they felt as if they didn't have a sense of basically figuring out how to problem solve and what have you in those situations. So in mental health is very important because you learn coping mechanisms, you learn how to really calm your mind, you learn how to just understand your triggers and things of that nature, and you learn how to really advocate and speak up for yourself. You don't feel well, you don't feel okay, you can express someone with words what you're feeling and how you're feeling and why. And a lot of times with our young people, they won't say anything because they either feel as if they're not going to be listened to or heard, or they don't really have the words to kind of express what's really happening to them and how they're feeling in the moment. So this is a great movement towards, our government saying that we're going to provide more resources to our young people so that they understand that we care about them and we really need them to really work through the issues that they have at an early age.
Yeah, this is another topic that we will stay on top of. You can rest assured of that. Again, don't forget, next week we will have both Congressman Jamal Bowman and Hank Johnson on to talk more about the RAP Act. We'll have Dawn back to chime in on it as well with the congressman. And hopefully we can find out where Russell is, and Russell can join us as well. But
maybe
thanks
he's
again.
Still meditating.
Maybe he's still meditating, doing yoga. Well, thanks again for joining us this morning. Dawn, always good to see you. And stay tuned tomorrow for another episode of Let It Be Known.